From Tommy, it's her birthday today.
Right. Is she here?
Tommy, are you there?
No, she's not on the list. Have you seen something? Have you got some?
So, what's her current status? She getting treatment or what kind of treatment? Radio.
That's the only the oncologist and the other person said that they were very happy with the one so far.
Radio killed the video star. Or the other way. We have 1 more minute, so we're gonna have a 1 minute sleep.
It's called micro-napping.
Nano napping.
We had one of our conferences where somebody talked about micro-napping. So we have nap areas. You figured that out yesterday. We had crash pads for the volunteers. And I'd say, just lie down for a minute and feel so much better.
Well, at Sydney Uni, they used to have like a special room for people with disabilities that had a bed in it. So if you felt really tired, you just go and unlock the bed, unlock the bed, then go and do some more. Wonderful. It works.
Praise to Manjusha, right?
Yes. Obeisance to my Guru,
Manjusha also this heart, the scriptural text, the body of all things is that was under strange and faulty sun, clouded by the elements of trace. What is it in the thinking? Confused by the darkness of all. He was drunk and thunder, stupid, whose powerful sword of wisdom hews out suffering wherever it sprouts, clearing away the darkness of all beings. I entreat you, O Manjushri, your princely body is adorned with the 112 marks of the Buddha, who has completed the 10 stages, achieving the highest perfection of the Bodhisattva, who has been pure from the beginning. O Manjushri, O loving one with the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness and closing my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom, so that I may gain insight into the Buddha's words and the text that each man. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations by listening to the teachings, I attain this state of Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain this state of Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain the state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. Right. How are you people? Is it week 2 or 3 of this module?
Is it 15? It's 15.
It's 18 actually. 2.
Yeah.
Week 2.
Exam.
Okay.
So this must be week. This must be week 3.
Week 3. Okay. Cool. So, Geshta and I have been away during the weekend. We went down to the Gold Coast. There's a really nice family of mainly Sikkimese people from Sikkim, and also some others. So they've been inviting us for a long time, so we finally made it down there, and they got a new set of Kangyu, teachings of the Buddha. They weren't Geshe to recite it, but I think that for one person to recite the whole Kangyu will probably take a year. I mean, if they do it kind of every day for most of the day. Yeah, they knew, but kind of I think that probably they haven't really thought of the implications. So there is one volume of the Kangyu, very thick, like very thick volume. Which consists of like a summary of the whole Kangyu. So Geshe said, all right, I'll recite that. So I also managed to do some recitation myself, and it was actually quite nice because it was, first of all, the Sutra of Kshitigarbha, so that was for you, Tupten, in that sutra set, but there was also, I can't remember the name of the sutra that I was reciting, but it was going down, it was listing down the Bodhisattva downfalls. So I thought that it's pretty cool because we have the 6th session Guru Yoga, or other texts that we use in order to study the Bodhisattva root downfalls, but I've never seen a sutra reference for them. So there you go. No, it's not like a random thing. It is based in sutra. So, sorry? Well, Geshe was doing it. So we were there for 2 days. Geshe did a few hours every day. And I have to say that I was kind of doing a bit of more socializing, eating and talking. Yeah, I was the moral support for the whole operation. Okay. So although we spoke about it quite a few times with respect to chapter number 5, let's just kind of make sure that we're all on the same board. Chapter number 5 is teaching guarding introspection, alertness, vigilance. It says that the way to guard the training, as we've taken the Bodhisattva vow, is guarding the mind. Then the method of guarding the mind is guarding mindfulness and introspection. The way of guarding introspection is guarding mindfulness. So first of all, we spoke of the disadvantages of lacking introspection, which is needed in order to guard the training. And then we went into guarding mindfulness as a method for guarding introspection with a brief presentation. Then I don't think that we've gone through in the tutorials of the extensive explanation, so I thought I'd just to recap the extensive explanation of guarding mindfulness as a method of guarding introspection, particularly because it speaks of the way mindfulness arises and the way introspection arises from that, which I think that can give us, maybe we can have a discussion or we can think about it in order to highlight how you put it into practice. Today we started the way to train in the conduct of guarding the mind by means of mindfulness and introspection, which interestingly, as we said, from this point onwards, from chapter number 5, Shantideva is teaching the perfection. So chapter number 5 teaches the perfection of ethics. Chapter number 6 teaches patience. Chapter number 7, joyous effort. Chapter number 8 teaches absorption. Chapter number 9 teaches wisdom. And we said that generosity is found across the text. So since chapter number 5 teaches ethics, there are 3 types of ethics. There's ethics of abstaining from wrongdoing, ethics in working for the sake of others, and ethics of gathering virtuous dharma. So this is what the next section of the text is getting at. So we have, let's look at this. The way to train in ethics of refraining from negative actions is the first explanation from verse 34. Then we have the way to train in ethics of gathering virtuous dhammas from verse 59. And finally, we'll have the way to train in the ethics of working for the benefit of sentient beings. So you can say also guarding virtuous actions, virtuous dhammas. Sorry. Way of training ethics of guiding virtues down on verse 59, and working for the sake of sentient beings in verse 84. So these are the 3 types of ethics. Now, in order to train in ethics, we need mindfulness and alertness. So how are they developed? Let's look at verse 29 and then the verses following that. Therefore, I shall never let mindfulness depart from the doorway of the mind. If it goes, I should recall the harm of the lower realms and closely place it in there. So here it teaches briefly the way to train in mindfulness. Sorry, I didn't share the screen with you guys. I'll do it quickly. So therefore, I shall never let mindfulness depart from the doorway of my mind. If it goes, I should recall the harms of the lower realms and closely place it there. So do you remember what mindfulness is? Yeah, not forgetfulness with respect to a familiar object. 100 out of 100, 100% correct. So it is placing mindfulness at the doorway of my mind. What does it mean? If mindfulness is non-forgetfulness of a familiar object, how do you place it at the doorway of the mind? Sorry? By concentrating on it. Being vigilant, checking that it's... So introspection is also checking at the doorway of the mind. The mind is the object of your mindfulness. It seems that kind of, I don't have like a right and wrong answer to that. Kind of, I just thought that it's good to it's just good to think about it, to see if we can get the meaning. So Kate is asking, could we again distinguish between vigilance and self-obsession or perfectionism? Eva is saying mind guard, that's placing mindfulness at the doorway, the gateway of the mind. So Kate will speak about vigilance in a few minutes, or alertness in a few minutes. So then we'll see if it answers your question. I don't think that we've discussed it before, did we? What the difference is between vigilance and being obsessive or a perfectionist. Okay, so placing mindfulness at the doorway of the mind. Well, mindfulness is explained here in a broad context. So remember that it's not just here we're discussing mindfulness of what is to be done and what is to be avoided. So it's not just mindfulness of one thing, because normally we speak about mindfulness and alertness with respect to developing single-pointed concentration, right? So here we're not just looking at single-point concentration, we're looking at a broader context. What we need to do is, having developed bodhicitta, having taken the vow, is to gather training of the mind of enlightenment, which means that we need to well remember what we need to do and what we ought not to do. In order to remember what we need to do and what we ought not to do, first of all, we study a lot. We study together. Right? So we don't just read a book. We can just read a book, but here, for example, in this course, we study together. We have discussion. We have tutorials. We have exams. I think that also during the breaks or during the weekend, some of you are discussing some of the points with each other. You're doing sometimes the review questions together. All of that is becoming acquainted with this material so that we can remember it. I think that all of us know, based upon what we've been doing so far, that it's not enough to study or to read one thing as a one-time off thing. You need to do it again and again and again and again in order to be able to remember that, right? So retaining that I think being able to retain all the ins and outs, or most of it, is like placing it at the door of your mind. You don't let it go away, because once it is not there anymore, you're not mindful of it. Forgetfulness has set in. Was there?
I was just going to say that maybe in a different way that placing mindfulness at the core of the mind is having mindfulness.
Hmm. So mindfulness of mindfulness, meaning that you need to apply constantly.
So I think that that's the biggest thing is
Also cultivating the appreciation of the input of that. I think that, one thing that makes it harder to understand how you employ mindfulness is that we're, first of all, used to the word mindfulness to mean a particular thing in English, whereas in Tibetan it's just remember. Also, it is used so over, in so many different contexts. And I think that we sometimes speak about eating mindfully, walking mindfully, doing things mindfully, washing the dishes mindfully, in which you're constantly present. So when you are eating mindfully, when you're walking mindfully, when you're washing the dishes mindfully, it seems that, to me, it seems that actually what you're doing is you heighten your introspection. You're doing something knowingly. Right? So I think that when we speak about mindfulness in a general way, doing things mindfully, I think that actually what it refers to in many cases is doing things knowingly, which is introspection. Whereas mindfulness is just remembering what you're doing, what you ought to be. So maybe mindfulness of mindfulness, maybe it's also linked up with introspection. I'm just kind of wondering, thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So then mindfulness is just remembering. Or remembering of familiar objects. So, sorry, that's not what I wanted to put on the screen. All right, was this. Therefore, I shall never let mindfulness depart from the doorway of my mind. If it goes, I should recall the hums of the lower realms and closely place it there. Which means that if I forget what I'm supposed to be doing, what I need to be cultivating, I need to abstain from the 18 root downfalls and the 46 secondary offenses. I should remind myself of the faults of the lower realms. Particularly, why would we not be mindful? What would be the distraction? Yeah, distractions, the afflictions. The afflictions make us forget about what
the afflictions of everyday life, I suppose.
The afflictions in everyday life. Yeah. I mean, I think that distraction is the onset of the afflictions, and then we have attachment arises, anger arises, we think of past events, future, the things that are yet to come. We become excited about things of the future, what we need to do, what this person had said, the other person had said. So these are all the working of our afflictions in different ways. So it says in this verse, if it goes, I shall recall the hums of the lower realms and closely place it there. Yeah, it's better for you to be burnt or for your head to be cut off than rather to ever submit to the afflictions. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the suffering that it caused me will be greater in the lower realms. The suffering that the afflictions cause me will be much greater. Yeah. So So if mindfulness lives because of the afflictions, then we should remind ourselves of the drawbacks of the lower realms and reaffirm our mindfulness. So, how does it work, I think, on a day-to-day interaction? Because here it's not only about sitting in single point in concentration and develop single point in meditation and developing mindfulness. It's more like once we have taken the vow, we have to be mindful of what we need to do and what we need to avoid. We get sidetracked. We get confused. Anger, attachment, affairs of everyday life arise in our mind so that we forget what we should be doing. We get angry with other people. We are not generous when we should be generous. So we remind ourselves, I'm now not abiding by my commitments, and therefore I'm creating negativities. I might be committing downfalls that result in suffering of the lower, suffering of the lower realm. So we remind ourselves of that, and then we again reaffirm our mindfulness. So we recollect, we remind ourselves what we ought to be doing. So it seems that this is what verse 29 says. Then it goes into a more extensive explanation of the way that you do it. So you rely upon external conditions, which is relying upon a virtuous spiritual teacher. So we rely upon a spiritual teacher, first of all, because they give us an explanation of what mindfulness is, but also the way to be mindful. But not only to give us an explanation, they also embody stuff. They set an example of what it means to be mindful. I mean, when we think of teachers that we are relying upon, we have to begin with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or any other teacher that you're relying upon. Then by observing day in and day out, or during teachings or in other occasions, you see that there is some constant mindfulness that they have of what needs to be done, and what needs not to be done. But also in your daily interactions with them, if you have that opportunity, not only sorry? Okay. Not only that they teach you what mindfulness is, but I think that, if you're, for example, if you're a monastic and you see the geshes, for example, the way that they behave, the way that they carry themselves around, the way that they relate to holy objects and so forth, they set an example for us how to do it and how to be mindful of it. So, when I was thinking about it, I remembered occasions in which, sometimes I stay with my teacher in Taiwan for a few weeks, day in and day out. So we have breakfast together, lunch together, and so forth. Sometimes I forget to do my food offering prayers. Particularly, sometimes if I'm alone and I'm totally distracted, I forget to do my food offering. With Rinpoche, my teacher, I've never seen that happen. There's always offering, there's always kind of saying thing at the right time, getting into kind of a place and seeing statues, offering prostrations, burning incense. So by that, they set an example of what it is to remember. It is to remember the qualities of the objects of refuge. It is to remember your training. It is to remember what you're wanting to do. So the external condition is relying upon a spiritual teacher. Does it make sense? All right. Yeah. Rejoicing in Roger's mindfulness. Yeah. So we have, first of all, relying upon a spiritual teacher as the external condition. Then we have the internal condition. Let's look at that. So the internal condition is having correct mental attention in 6 lines, verse 31 and the first 2 lines in verse 32. Do you remember what it says before looking at the verse? yeah, kind of you remind yourself that you're at the presence of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, your teachers, particularly if you think that my Root Lama or Root Lamas are Buddhas, they are manifestation of Buddhas. The Dalai Lama sees whatever I do. Kyabje Lama Sopa Rinpoche sees whatever I do. Bodhisattvas see whatever I do. So we always remind ourselves, we need to constantly again and again remind ourselves that they have unimpeded vision, unobstructed vision, so that our actions of body, speech, and mind are not hidden. It's actually funny because sometimes, outside of our room, we try to behave properly. But then when we go into our room or house, we let our spiritual hair down, right? So, we sometimes forget to do certain things, or, we behave in ways, I wouldn't say reckless, but not with the same attention to the details when we're outside. Sorry? Yeah, laziness sets in. Yeah, same. So we remind ourselves of their unimpeded vision. So it says, through the company of gurus, through the subsequent teachings of abbots, and through fear, mindfulness will easily be generated in fortunate people who act respectfully. I'm always dwelling in the presence of all those Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who are endowed with unimpeded visions in all. By thinking in this way, I shall likewise obtain possession of shame, respect, and fear. This first. So the question was, when you're offering salt, you don't offer it again? Yeah. Okay. I do that, I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. Yeah, we'll remind each other, which, I think that this is also kind of part of the benefits of having a community. So you can have a community here, but for those of you who live outside, you might have your dumb friends. It's good to associate with like-minded people because we bounce off each other. We remind each other. So in that sense, we have to also make sure that we are positive, that we become good company rather than, sometimes when you hang out with your Dharma friends, you can start complaining about others, bitching about others, criticizing others. So, that's like being Dharma friends, but in a negative way. So having a positive influence of each other is also a way of becoming mindful of what we need to do. Sorry? Yeah. Yeah, if we have Dharma friends, but we complain about others, criticize others, look down on others and so forth, they're not Dharma friends, actually, they're negative friends. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to be positive always. I mean, our mind is still afflicted. It's hard to avoid that. So just having someone to talk to helps. Even if they don't kind of tell you to get a grip, or it's not like that. Just having someone that you can talk to helps. So yeah. I agree.
We were discussing the second and not that the
Yeah. So you're saying that this is also something that came in the discussion group, that having Dharma friends discussing things with each other, which helps you, it is a reminder, it helps you to remember things. So that's the internal conditions, and I'm just going to go back to the text. So the internal condition is thinking that we are surrounded by Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and our gurus. And we think that if we do not behave in a way that we're supposed to be behaving, if we do not, I mean, it's not only behaving physically and verbally, but you can say that also they see our minds. The Buddhas, of course, see our minds, but the gurus also see our mind. I mean, it's particularly potent, I think, that, Geshe is speaking of having to be harmonious, and sometimes we get annoyed and angry and kind of a bit cross with each other. I think that it's always helpful to think of, if Lama Zopa Rinpoche was here in the room, would we behave in the same way? Would we criticize each other with the same kind of righteousness if he was here? So then when we think of actually, if he is a manifestation of Buddha, he has unimpeded vision. So although I don't see him kind of now in person, I can think that still he knows what I'm doing. He knows what I'm thinking. He knows what I'm saying. So it brings about, so it's this collection of verses, say, this one. So through companies of gurus, through subsequent teachings of the abbots, and through fear, right? So this verse 30 teaches the external conditions, relying upon spiritual teachers that not only teach us what mindfulness is, but also they exemplify that. They give us an example of how to do it, but also in their presence, you develop fear. Think of how fearful it is or embarrassing it would be to act in a way that is completely reckless when your ordination teacher is here. So you can start to think of when your ordination master is here. So you can start to visualize certain situations, like, for example, your root teacher is sitting in front of you at the throne, and kind of you're just about to take something that was not given to you. And they're going to see it. You're going to get completely sprung by your ordination master. Pretty embarrassing, isn't it? Not embarrassing, it's quite scary. I mean, it's quite scary also when you think of the consequences of actions like that result in miserable states of existence, right? So then it says, I'm always dwelling in the presence of all those Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who are endowed with unimpeded vision in all. By thinking in this way, I shall likewise obtain possession of shame, which means that, again, think of, for example, imagine Lama Zopa Rinpoche, His Honesty Dalai Lama being here in the room or wherever you are at home, is there sitting with you, just next to you. So if you're about to engage in something that you shouldn't do, then there is a sense of shame, thinking that it's not really adequate for me to do it. I'm a monk, I'm a nun, I'm Buddhist, I'm a lay practitioner. I have the vow of approaching virtue. This is not something that is suitable for me to do. But also on top of that, we can also add a sense of embarrassment. My teachers are seeing me, they know what I'm doing, so it is pretty embarrassing. Then it says also to develop a sense of respect, right? So we respect our teachers, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. So we also abstain from acting negatively. And we also have fear of the miserable states of existence, suffering of miserable states of existence that will result due to negative behavior. So that is cultivating the internal condition, which is mental attention to the presence of those beings. Then it says, and this is, I think, where we start off today, the way introspection is developed through mindfulness. So we have two lines that say the way mindfulness arises. Also, through doing this, recollection of the Buddha will repeatedly occur. And we also spoke about recollection of the three jewels, not only of the Buddha. So how does it work? Now, if you think about what is the meaning of these two lines, also through that recollection of the Buddha, recollection of the three jewels will occur. How would you explain that? Sorry? Don't look at you. I'm looking at people at home. How will you explain that? All right, so I'll... So you're recalling your vows, you're recalling your commitments, you're recalling your refuge in their presence to make those commitments so that you remember that. Lucia, did you want to say something?
Yes, I was just going to say pretty much what the other person just said. When you think of Shakyamuni, you think of the Dharma, you think of it's all inclusive.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it seems to me that like we just did the Manjushri prayer, but earlier we did the Shakyamuni prayer. The Buddha's presence is in our lives, it seems, pretty much at least once a day, you know, if that's how often we pray. But over time, it seems to kind of sink in more and more and more. And so now you're praying to the Buddha, but now you're reading the Buddha. You know, when you were born, you stepped out 7 strides. I mean, all of a sudden, these things become more and more and more like your own personality, your own attitude, your own way of thinking. I'm thinking. What do you think? How far off base am I?
No, I agree. And I'm wondering also if you're talking to us from North America. Are you here in Australia?
I'm on the moon.
On the moon. All right.
Sorry, Chicago.
Chicago, all right. That's pretty cool. One of my best friends is now in Chicago, so
Hi. Heyo. Hi.
Yeah. So I think that, I agree with you. I think that we're doing different prayers, we're doing different recitations. We are thinking of the Buddha to begin with, the historical Buddha and the qualities, deeds of the historical Buddha. And we also think of other beings when we include in our prayers. And I think that in looking at it, I think that if I just connect it with a couple of verses that we've just covered, when it says, I'm always dwelling in the presence of all those Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who are endowed with unimpeded vision in all. Not only kind of in this context, but also when we do our prayers and so forth, then if we think of our gurus present, we think of the Buddhas that are present, if we think of Bodhisattvas being present, then for us, they also embody the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. So we also remind ourselves like that, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, in the way that you said, and also in the way that Turkey has said. Kind of we think to ourselves, well, that's the person that is giving me the vow. The vow came from Buddha Shakyamuni. My refuge is in Buddha Shakyamuni. My refuge is in Dhamma, in true paths, in true cessation. My refuge is in the Sangha, the community of teachers, the community of Arya Bodhisattvas, and so forth. So through that, we have recollection of the Buddha. Does it make sense?
On a path that has been well trodden, that so many other people have gone through these steps, and they have succeeded them, they have been successful in achieving these steps, and I'm going to.
Yeah. Yeah, you remind yourself that kind of this is the path that you're treading. This is what you're seeking to achieve. You're following the footsteps. Yeah. yeah, I'm just kind of repeating some of it because one more has said that not always she hears what we say, so I'm just trying to also repeat it. So, so the way introspection is developed through mindfulness, then first of all, we have mindfulness arises. So mindfulness arises in that it reminds us, so we're developing that mental attention, reminding ourselves that we're in the presence of all those beings. We also remind ourselves of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and I think that through that we also remind ourselves of what we should be doing and what we ought not to be doing, right? So our mind becomes more centered around everything that we need to be doing, our spiritual progress. Through that, it says introspection arises. So let's look at introspection. We haven't asked him. Let's do it tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So the way introspection arises from that in verse 33, it says, when mindfulness abides for the purpose of guarding against afflictions from the doorway of the mind, then introspection will come about and even that which has gone will return. So we study a lot. We study something repeatedly. We do it over and over again. Now, we memorize, we repeat things, we have discussions, and bit by bit, we're able to retain in our mind more and more information, more and more things that we need to be doing and we ought not to be doing. But it's not simply retaining information, also our mind is transformed to that. Now, if we have just intellectual knowledge, but we don't really relate to that in our behavior, we don't trust that this is what we need to do, then our mind is not going to be transformed just by having intellectual knowledge. So we increase the knowledge. We also work on that mental transformation, developing faith in what we want to do, in virtuous actions, developing a greater sense of fear from negative actions or downfalls. So we have mindfulness that remembers, and then we have introspection, which is knowingly. So it seems to me when I read through that, it seems that mindfulness is, first of all, something that is done mentally, right? So we have that remembering mentally what we need to be doing. Then we have introspection, which checks whether body, speech, and mind are doing what they should be doing. So mindfulness is aware of all the things that we're doing, that we should be doing, and introspection is the one that checks whether we're doing it. Does it make sense? So in that sense, as I said before, the word for introspection in Tibetan is sheshin, which means knowingly. So engaging with something knowingly, engaging with our body, speech, and mind knowingly, or knowing what we're doing with our body, speech, and mind. So again, I go back to how we started this session, where we often speak of doing things mindfully. I'm washing dishes mindfully, I'm walking mindfully, I'm speaking mindfully, and so forth. It seems that it is actually introspection that is checking that we're doing it mindfully. Mindfulness is remembering the whole lot, and introspection is checking whether we're doing it. And if it discovers that we're not doing it, which means that, suppose that I should be, here I want to be mindful of my training as Bodhisattva. I want to be mindful of having to abstain from the 18 root downfalls and the 46 secondary offenses. So I study this topic, I think of this topic, I have discussions with you, I have discussions with myself. Then every so often I need introspection to check whether an affliction has crept into my mind, whether I'm distracted, whether I'm engaging in a physical, verbal, or mental action that will contradict what I need to be doing. So that discovery is done by introspection. Introspection is the one that is doing the checking. And if I have no introspection, it means that an affliction has crept in. It's already in the system. So then I reinstate my introspection. mindfulness is there in a sense that I can remember what I need to be doing, but I reinstate introspection, which is checking my actions of body, speech, and mind, and make sure that I engage with things knowingly. So it says, when mindfulness abides for the purpose of guarding against afflictions from the doorway of the mind, then introspection will come about, and even that which had gone will return. So let's just read a couple of commentaries with respect to that to just make sure that we get a head around it. So we have, first of all, where is it? We have this. Yatsuda Rinpoche's commentary. At a time when one, through mindfulness, remains alert to protect oneself from the afflictions, then introspection, which analyzes which action is suitable and which is unsuitable, comes into existence, and degenerated introspection returns. Or rather returns, you can say that it is overcome. If it has degenerated, are reinstated. This is the meaning of returns. Since the skill in practice depends on mindfulness and introspection, one should become adept in this. So that's one explanation. Let's look at more. Then we have Kempo Kunten's commentary. So Paul, you asked about this commentary, right? So the first 5 chapters were translated by, I think, a German guy, and are available online for free. Yeah, so we're not breaching, so we're not breaching copyright rules. And then that was a basis for a translation that was published in the book called The Essence of Manjushu's Speech. I think that's the title of the text, right? So it is available in a library. So it says with respect to verse 33, when the mindfulness of not forgetting the points of what should be done and what should be avoided has been placed at the door of the dimension of the mind. Mindfulness focuses on the purpose of guarding the mind against engagement with the objects of the affliction. So first of all, I'd say that you have an affliction that arises in your mind, and then it's not a mention, it's a celestial mention. No, my mind is a dilapidated shack. Yeah, the door to the dimension of my mind, or the door to my untidy, unclean room. So at that time, introspection concerning the actions of one's 3 gates of body, speech, and mind will occur or will naturally come about. And even if introspection is something forgotten, or even if it has gone elsewhere, it will arise again or return. So we have mindfulness that remembers what we need to be doing. Then we detect whether an affliction has arisen and whether it has made us act in a particular way, in a negative way, with our body, speech, and mind. That detection is the function of knowingly, introspection, or alertness. So it will naturally, so it says, at that time, introspection concerning the actions of one's 3 gates of body, speech, and mind will occur, or will naturally come about. And even if introspection is sometimes forgotten, you get distracted because of the afflictions, or even if it has gone elsewhere, it will arise again or return, will be reinstated. If you hadn't had enough of it, I'm just going to read through just another part, which is, there's another commentary by Chakpak Yaltsen. I think that it's on the Dropbox. Tsigi has translated that, and kind of every once in a while look at that. So it says in this commentary, as for mindfulness, recall the virtuous activities that were predominantly familiarized with in the day. And until you fall asleep, follow it and rely upon it. It's actually quite nice because we constantly remind ourselves of what we ought to be doing. Virtue, virtue, virtue. You know, from morning to evening, we set our intention, we're trying to do that. Due to that, when you are asleep, you will be able to maintain the training in virtue, such as meditative stabilization, just as when you are awake. As for introspection, when relying on mindfulness, if any affliction should arise, having understood that, that's the knowingly, having seen that, abandon it without assenting to it. As for this discrimination of waking up, make the motivation, thinking, I shall wake up just this time. These procedures during the session breaks should be applied to whatever objects of observation and aspects you're training. There's also some good explanation that you gave before about those verses for training in mindfulness and introspection, so I recommend also going through this section. Yes, you can. So I just want to go back to Kate's original question. So it says, could we distinguish between vigilance and self-obsession or perfectionism? I think that with vigilance, we check that, you know, I think that, as we said now, that we're doing what we should be doing. But also in texts such as, for example, Lamatun Kappa's Laman Chemo, but also in other commentaries that I've seen before, there is in practical advice, it says that you start with the coarse things. Forget about the subtle things for the time being, because you're not going to be able to make everything perfect. Start with your coarse afflictions. Subdue your coarse afflictions first. Subdue your coarse behavior first. This is your priority. If you then, I think that, you know, I read through Thupten Chodron's commentary to one of the secondary offenses, which I thought I will cover today, but I don't know if we'll get the time. She makes the point that says that, you know, when we look at many activities that we do throughout the day, even as far as brushing our teeth, you can think that I'm attached to brushing my teeth, I'm attached to my toothpaste and so forth. And it might be true, but it's trivial, or it is not as coarse as comparing to other afflictions that we have in our mind. So first of all, we deal with the things that are really serious. Now, attachment is something that we need to get rid of. But more than kind of getting rid of attachment to brushing our teeth, for the time being, we need to get rid of, for example, the things that make us engage in the 18 Wu downfalls. It is more important to avoid relinquishing the mind of enlightenment, making effort in relinquishing the mind of enlightenment, making effort in abstaining from wrong views, making effort in avoiding praising oneself and believing others, then getting rid of attachment to brushing my teeth. So it is something, so I'm not saying that it is completely useless to get rid of that attachment, but if you try to be a perfectionist and do everything possible now, it's likely that you find that you're not going to be able to do everything possible. You will try it for some time. At some point you get too tired and you decide that it's better to leave everything and do something else. Throughout my years of engaging with this tradition and also meeting other people, I met a few people that had this attitude of being kind of wanting to do everything perfect. Everything has to be done perfectly. And I think that also many of them had a critical approach to others. Now, if others were not doing things perfectly, they were an object of scorn and criticism. All those people that had that attitude, I think, the one that I know, did not stay monastics. It was kind of at the end, I think that they felt that if it's not possible to guard everything perfectly, it's best to just leave it and do something else. So we're stuck with the things that are coarse. This is what is most important now. Work on your coarse affliction now. If it's anger, work on your anger. If it's attachment, work on your attachment. Start with the coarse things and then move through things that are more subtle. And I think that will be also a way to avoid self-obsession, right? If you kind of pick up a few things rather than everything, maybe that would be more manageable. Mm. Mm. So you're saying that when you start with the coarse ones, then you find out that the subtle ones come under the umbrella of the coarse ones. So, you know, it's like we're dealing with the coarse ones, you also, in time, yeah. And your eyes start to become teary. So change the topic. This is what you... Well, it's your choice. I don't want to put pressure on you, but yeah. 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 Yeah.
So this is how you can get out of it, and you can go on to a vow. Is the answer to that between your tutorial?
No, so first of all, in the tutorial notes, I have the answer to this question, to the whole thing. No, but also I'll tell you why I didn't ask for the way the perfections are completed with respect to the last three perfections. So the perfection of joyous effort, absorption, and wisdom. I didn't ask about it because none of the sources that I looked at had an answer for that. So we had a discussion about it, but it was more like, I think that it was a discussion in which we tried to come up with our own idea about ways of completing the perfection. But since I didn't have any source for that, I thought that, yeah, I couldn't really ask for it. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. So I think that we still have time to do one secondary offense, or to study one secondary offense. Let's not do it. Yeah. Which actually kind of, I find also this kind of, the last one to be quite, it gave me a bit of a chuckle. It says, if in seeing that a severe punishment would correct another person's faulty behavior and speech, you do not use those means to correct him just so you can avoid hurting their feelings. It is a secondary offense of not correcting others even though they are afflicted. So remember that comes out of the those secondary offenses that are affiliated with the perfection of ethics, working for the sake of others. There are different types of ethics. There's ethics of working for the sake of others. So here it says that if you see someone behaving in a way that is very negative, then that would require punishment, so to speak, and you don't make effort to correct their behavior and thinking that, you know, the person likes me, if I criticize them, they will be unhappy with me. I don't want them to dislike me, so I'm just gonna let them do it. It is a secondary offense here. In a couple of commentaries that I looked at, it says that, well, first of all, you need to look at your own mind, at your own action. So if there's something that needs to be, that you're doing, it is negative, and you're not making effort to correct it, it will fit this secondary offense. But also when you see others behaving in this way, if you don't correct them, it is that secondary offense. Now it gave me a chuckle because there's a fine line here between bossing others and acting in a way that is virtuous, right? So we, in acting to correct someone, we first of all need to see whether there is a situation that I can create where the person will be receptive. Will they listen to what I say? I mean, it might be that if I say something, the person will first of all kind of answer back or object and so forth, but later on they will have the space to think about it and look at their own situation. So if there is a situation where you can point out something like that to the person and you think that they will take it on board and do it. I remember that, when Geshe Jamin was here, he was quite wrathful. It was quite strict. And he didn't shy away from criticizing people. And I think that his way of thinking, I said it a few times, that if he was invited here as a Geshe, as a teacher, then part of his role is to point out people's fault. If he doesn't point out people's fault, he's not really doing his job. And people didn't like it. Some people whenever he pointed a fault, they got upset. I mean, I get upset when people point out my fault. I remember that, when I studied translation, there was this idea that working as a translator is good because the teacher also criticizes you and helps you to reduce your pride and so forth. So I was happy for having that opportunity. But the moment I came across criticism, it's like you sit here on this seat and there is a room full of people and the teacher kind of looks at you and said that you're too stupid, you're not going to get it.
Sometimes it might be better to admit to your own faults sort of at the same time or first as you're doing it, rather than try and sort of be high and mighty about it and say you're doing the wrong thing, but just say, well, I find myself sometimes doing that, blah, blah, blah. I think that then wins them over a little bit to think, oh, yeah, he's not just criticizing me, they're also criticizing themselves.
Yeah, you need to be skillful about it. But if you think that I don't want to say it because it will hurt the feeling, or they will dislike me, then that's a secondary offense.
We can't hear what's being said. We can't hear what's being said or ask the question.
Okay. I'll try to repeat it.
Yes, it's obviously one time, but maybe it works in the traditional monastery that whether that his role was to keep that up. That say not directly to the person, but the one who would know intentionally that it wasn't doing it. But then if the one next door was too thick, sorry, he didn't say that, but didn't get it, then you try other means. But first of all, you do this sort of indirect way.
Yeah.
And that didn't work. I just said, it wouldn't work here. The other way to say, thank God it wasn't me.
So it seems that kind of today, maybe previous time, people had problems with hearing what we say here because my computer setting was set up to my internal microphone rather than to this.
Is that better, Graham?
Was that better, Graham? Kind of, I changed it now halfway through what Chucky was saying. Did you feel it changed?
Yes, I could hear the end of what Chucky said.
All right. Sorry.
Sorry.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
You should have pointed out my fault at the beginning and not shy away from criticism. So I'll just repeat what Chukita was saying. She said, Geshe Sopa was saying that, if you have, like, for example, in a monastery situation, when you want to point out the fault in someone's behavior or attitude or what have you, sometimes rather than addressing it directly, you address it indirectly. Kind of, you either, you would say it either kind of, you go to the neighbor and say something, or you would
say it directly to them in front of everyone, not this one.
Yeah, or say it directly, to everyone and not to that person, which is something that's kind of, it's quite interesting, because sometimes when I think of past experiences here, when people got upset about something that the Geshe said, people get upset when they're being kind of, when the Geshe is speaking about the faults publicly. Yeah. Now, here we regard that as like a shaming campaign. But actually, this is the way that they do things in Tibetan society. It's a very cultural thing. So rather than addressing something directly with a person.
Yeah, in Australia, we tend to beat around the bush, we call it. That's an Australian slang term for not directly doing what you're talking about. But sometimes people say, well, look, don't beat around the bush. Tell me straight about what it is, That's where that saying comes from.
Yeah. Tibetans are kind of not really into direct confrontation. So sometimes when you hear Geshe bring up points in class, or kind of something in class that is, you think that, oh my God, they're shaming me here in front of everyone. You need to think that, well, this is the way that Tibetans do
it. Did you hear that?
No.
We can understand Tibetan very often, so we don't know what he's saying to you.
Yeah. All right. Let's leave it here for now.
Okay.
So, prayer book. May I quickly become Guru, Lord Buddha, and lead each and every sentient being into his enlightened realm because of these merits. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhisattva, which is not a reason, arise and grow, and that may the reason never diminish, but increase more and more. In this land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig and Zingyatso, please remain until samsara ends. You uphold the subdued small way, who serves the abundant repair of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Arjuna's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels. Protector of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. Thank you.
Thank you, Katzen.
Thanks, Carlton.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
No worries.
Carson. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, too.